What's up, people? Here we are again with installment number 3 of our conversation on the Book of Ruth. We've made it a habit to go through the Book of Common Prayer, the daily office. And so just had this idea of what if we looked at the Book of Ruth this week and how the Book of Ruth would speak to discipleship, to how we make disciples. And so my brother Drew, my old college roommate, decided that he'd be willing to engage in this with me. And so here we are again. We've been at this for a while. We'll have to tell you some of our stories of our prayer presence walks, some of those stories, and maybe we'll get to do that in the future. But let's get into it. You want to give us the context, and we'll get to moving here.
Yeah, sure. So our context today is as we followed down through Ruth, the beginning of chapter 2. Ruth goes out to glean from the fields. She gets noticed by Boaz, and Boaz then engages her. He offers her to come and eat with him. He offers her more security. He tells her that he wants her to only glean from his fields. He tells her to stay close to his maidens. He tells his servants to leave more out for her. And she continues to glean in the field, and she returns to Naomi, to her mother-in-law, and basically reports everything that she has seen and everything that's happened. Naomi closes out the chapter basically saying this is a good thing. Boaz is a family member. He's a relative. Stay close to him. God is providing for us. So that's kind of the context of where we're at today.
Yeah. Dope. So I think as I was reading this, the thing that leaped out to me, we've been talking about discipleship. And I've been thinking about, often I think about it in the one-on-one context. And it is some one-on-one involved, but discipleship is a communal process too. Mm. You've got to be connected to a community of faith, of believers.
Yeah.
So what I liked about this is that, Naomi, Mara, she's bitter, or as you said, she's salty. She's dealing with her own things. And it's cool to know that she doesn't have to sort of disciple Ruth on her own, She bears some of the responsibility, but when Ruth made the statement of where you go, I'll go, your God will be my God, your people will be my people, she was making a commitment not just to Ruth, not just to Naomi, not just to Naomi's God, but to Naomi's people, her community, her family. And so I love the fact that we see Ruth she's connected with Naomi, but then she gets connected to Boaz. Then she gets connected to the men who are working that field, part of Boaz's family's tribe, if you will. And then, the young women who are gleaning in the fields as well. And so now it becomes this community process. And I've thought about this, like, your last name is Wins. And I've used this analogy a lot. So if I wanted to become a Wins, I would not read the Book of Wins, right? I could read the Book of Wins and I could learn some Wins precepts. I could learn some Wins doctrines. But I would have to live with the Wins to become an authentic Wins, if I could say it that way. I just couldn't read the book, the book wouldn't tell me enough. I'd have to be a part and participate in the Wins family to become a Wins.
Okay.
So I'm looking at this here. It just reminds me that discipleship is a communal process. You have to become a part of the family. And so she's getting connected to this way of life, and these people. So it's not just Naomi now, but it's Boaz, it's the men, it's the women that she's connected to now that's helping her become a part of this new life and this new community.
Wow, that's a lot. You totally went in a direction that I hadn't even thought of for this section of Ruth. So I kind of got stuck a little bit on. Now we're talking more about Boaz, and I started to take a more top-down view. So I kind of backed up and looked at the entire book, and what I got from it was, if discipleship is a process, right? It's a process towards something, right? So it's a process for us as believers. It's a process of conversion. It's a process into going deeper with the Lord. It's a process of becoming masters in the faith ourselves, right? And so what I saw Boaz as is the kind of the destination rather than part of the process. So I'm just saying that to say I got something out of it different, but then I want to come back to what you said. And I like that concept that to take the phrase, it takes a village.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that we've, in the last two discussions that we've had, we've touched on just barely, but, just surface area, the abuses that can occur with discipleship when we talk about issues of submission, when we talk about, humility and somebody being kind of in authority over another person. And so I think when discipleship goes from just being a singular one-on-one thing and becomes a larger, more community oriented thing, it really at least decreases that ability for abuse. It decreases the ability for one person to kind of lord over another one. Jesus says, even the Gentiles lord over one another. That's not the concept of discipleship. That's not the kingdom of God. And having the community participate in the discipleship and transformation process of an individual kind of eliminates that. But I still think there's a primary, let's call it that, a primary discipler. And if Ruth has anything about discipleship in it, I think Naomi remains the primary discipler in the story. So what I saw in that was what comes out of this second half. Like we talked yesterday in our second installment about Ruth taking initiative and Naomi giving her the freedom to take that initiative, right? What I saw at the end of chapter 2 was the discipler, Naomi, giving affirmation to the discipled. So I wonder if you want to touch on that a little bit. Did you see that?
Oh, absolutely. I had to scroll to that part on my phone where she said, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." And so I think, pretty much she says, where were you? What did you do? And even before then, I think it's important to point out that Ruth actually went back and cooked for Naomi, gave her some food, make sure she was taken care of in there, having a conversation. And Naomi is like, "Hey, tell me about your day. What did you do? What happened?"
Yeah.
And Ruth reports back, "This is it." And I can see Naomi like, "Oh, this is our family. Yeah, this is a good thing."
Yeah.
You connected to them. These are good people. And so I think that if we look at the primary discipler as being Naomi, she does affirm, which is affirmation is a huge thing. Like sometimes we think, okay, I don't want people in Christ to get a big head because we tell them they do something well. You know, we think that people are gonna. But really, we need affirmation. When we affirm each other in the body of Christ or in our communities of faith, what we're saying is, look, I see this in you. You did well. And if you are the one, if you're a disciple, that makes you feel like, oh yeah, okay, this was the right thing. Okay, thank you. I recognize that. I think we could be quick to correct, quick to rebuke, but not quick to affirm. And you need both. But I think too, affirmation is so important. They tell you that in a young child's life that it's important that that child they hear the affirmation of what they did right more than the correction of what they did wrong.
Why do you think it is that we have such a difficult time with affirmation? Like you mentioned that thing of, people we don't want people to get too big-headed, right? Why is it that we're so concerned about that, and rather than giving credit where credit's due?
Man, that's a good question. It could stem from our own insecurities, where we feel like, oh wait, you think you're getting better than me? You know, I have seen that attitude and heard that. You know, don't get too big for your britches. You know. Hopefully nobody heard me say anything else. I'm sitting in the cafe. Hopefully they heard the R in britches, right? But you know, there is that thing of where we feel, I don't know, man. If people seem to establish some kind of achievement, maybe we see that as independence. Maybe we see that as a negative. I really don't know. That's a good question, though. It's something that I'll be asking myself this week.
Yeah. You know, I think it does stem from a sense of insecurity, in that, you know, I kind of mentioned it. I don't remember where I mentioned it, but there's this fear of somebody taking my job, and we don't want anybody to get ahead of what the plan that we have for them. And I think the truth is, if we're in a state of humility as it is, and self-reflection, if we ever get to that point of being too big-headed, I think we fall flat on our faces anyways, and it becomes self-correcting.
Yeah.
Unless you have maybe like a mental health disorder, you know, like a severe narcissism. I think most people who operate in social settings know that there's this kind of self-correcting thing that's going on in your brain. You know when you step out and say something that you shouldn't have, you know, when you speak outside of yourself. You know when you're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I would have done that better. I wish I would have acted better in this circumstances. And it's almost as if, you know, the insecurity that we have in trying to not give affirmation is like we feel like that mechanism doesn't work in people's heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I gotta say, like, the most significant thing that I gathered from our reading today was affirmation. Affirmation is so important. If you're a discipler, if you're in a position of authority over people, if your job is to raise them up, they will never reach their full potential if they are not being affirmed in what they are doing well and encouraged on the initiative that they take. If every time that they take initiative, they're being pulled back, they're being stunted, they're being stopped, they will never go. And it does become an area of control. You're not really looking to disciple them. You're looking to lord over them. And I think
Absolutely.
If I could say anything about discipleship from a discipler's perspective, or to those people who are doing discipleship, it is that affirmation is essential.
Well, and this is interesting because Yesterday, we talked about Boaz affirming Ruth, saying, hey, pretty much your reputation has preceded you. I've heard good things about you, and that's great. We see affirmation there. And so maybe we can tie these two things together here where I'm talking, kind of what stuck out to me is the community aspect of how the community is involved. And the reason I say the community is involved because it's the rituals, it's the practices of that community or that family that help form us, because discipleship is about formation. And I think tied to that is helping us develop our identity. Who are we in this new way of life? As a Christian, who am I in Christ? And so I think a big part of that is, looking at Boaz, looking at Naomi, they're not afraid to give affirmation to Ruth. And so, one of the things that I walk away is like, what about my faith community, my family? How can we make it? How can we develop a practice of affirmation, if you will? Because it's the practice of the daily office, if you will, that helps us develop and nurture our spiritual life.
Yeah.
You don't get better without practice.
Right.
Someone said, the old quote is practice makes perfect, but I heard someone say that practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe in our communities, we've had a negative practice of criticism and correction. And so that's been the thing that's carried on for all of these years. And maybe how are we intentional about speaking encouragement or affirmation in the lives of those that we're investing in as a community?
Yeah.
I think that could be changing. That could be transformation.
Yeah. I think absolutely. One of the things that I heard this at a conference recently, and it's just been sticking with me. And it's the lies that we tell ourselves and the lies the enemy tells us. And there's actually, I'm going to butcher this for any scientific people who might be watching this, but please forgive me. But, they did a great job at the conference. I'm just going off the cuff here. So there's actually connectors that are actually formed in our brain when we start to say something as fact. And so if that fact is a lie, it takes about 3 weeks, but that thought begins to form and it begins to solidify in about 3 weeks. And in about 3 months, that thought becomes a permanent fixture within our brain.
Yeah.
And so if that thought is a lie, either a lie told to us by another person or a lie that we've told to ourselves, if we have a low self-esteem or, just our own insecurities, that at 3 months, that lie has now become a part of who you are and how you interact with the world. And, all of your responses are going to be filtered through that thought that's now solidified in your brain. Now, the reverse is also true. So you can actually reprogram your brain. It takes repetitive, repeating a fact, right? And eventually, so the new thought, let's say it's the reverse of the old thought, the opposite of the old thought. So the new thought gets planted. Let's just say the old thought was, I'm a terrible, I'm a bad person. I'm always angry, right? And the new thought is, I'm actually not a bad person. I'm a kind-hearted person, right? So the new thought forms, and it, like I said, it takes about 3 weeks to grow and to solidify. And at the same time that new thought is solidifying, the old thought begins to break up, right? Yeah. So there's this these one is growing and one is shrinking as the new one is growing. And then, within the 3 month time period, this one can eventually disappear. and this one can take hold to become the permanent thought. Addiction specialists work with this kind of concept. I don't know if they actually understand how the mechanics work, but they work with this kind of concept in breaking down the reliance on the whatever it is the individual's addicted to, and then creating new pathways and new thought processes over a period of time so that it's not the obsession on the addicted thing. And I think all of that to say, when it comes to discipleship, what we're planting in the mind of the person that we're discipling can have a negative effect on them for a very long time. And likewise, it can have a positive effect if what we're planting is good.
Are you talking about Inception? No, I'm just joking. I just thought of that. But you're so right. I had this situation with my daughter yesterday. So there was a situation. Our family had to make an adjustment, a change of plans. And so my daughter, she recognized herself going down a negative path of thought, this pathway of negative thought that has been forming, but she was aware enough to catch it. And she said, "Hey, Dad, I need to do this. Can you hold me accountable to doing this? Because I need to do something different."
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was kind of taken back. But in that moment, I had to, and I'm thankful. I would give the credit to the Spirit for this. And I was to say, you know what? That's very insightful of you. That's a good thing. I want to affirm you in that. That's the right decision. That's a good decision. That's not an easy one, but that's a good one. That's the right one.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially in the process of discipleship, when people are showing initiative, when they're being assertive, we shouldn't look at it as if they're reaching for a position or if they're trying to exert authority. Maybe it's this child learning to live out this new life that they have and exploring. Just because the kid says no doesn't mean that they're becoming negative. What they're learning is, oh wait, I do have power. I can make a decision.
Yeah.
And so affirming that, oh, you can actually say no. And so affirming that, seeing Naomi affirm Ruth, seeing Boaz affirm Ruth, that's huge. I'm glad you pointed that out. I think that's great, man.
So I have to apologize. I left my charger at home, and I'm recording this for us today, and we have about 10 minutes left of recording time. So I wanted to just ask you if there was anything else that you noticed out of the passage that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Oh man, I think that's good right there. I think there's so much that could be pulled out of that still, but for me, I walk away with how the importance of the community playing a role and practices, because now she's going to get up at the same time. She's going to go participate in the life with these women in this community. And, Naomi is not jealous at all. Naomi is not like, oh, wait a minute, who you hate? That's the wrong. She's like, oh no, those are good people. Those are the people you need to attach yourselves to. And here you see a bit of discernment. It's actually positive correction. Affirmation is positive correction.
Yeah.
If I could say it that way. It's, these are the people that you want to be with. This is the community that you want to be a part of. Don't go over there because that's just not, we don't know what's happening. It's dangerous, but this I know, these are good people. I'm glad, hang out with these people. And I think it furthers her life, of becoming a part of the people of God. And so I think that's another underlying point that Ruth, who is often, the phrase is coined about, she's the Moabitess. That's her identity.
Yeah.
She's of Moab. But now we see her identity in transition. She's becoming less a Moabite and now becoming a part of the people of God.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
And the people of God are now welcoming her, affirming her. You know, they didn't close their doors and say, you can't be a part of this. But they're saying, we're going to invite you into this living way of life. And now she's in the process of identity formation, and they're affirming that.
Yeah. 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 I think that's huge. I think that process of Ruth becoming